All right, so our last topic this evening is talking about creating good boss fights. Because you got to have a boss. You got to be like a boss.
Yeah.
Who the boss? You the boss?
I'm the boss.
You the boss.
Yeah.
Teal the boss.
I'm the boss.
Teal the boss. I'm just along. I'm a lackey. This is a very good article on Gameindustry.biz where hold on, let me there's a mouse, where they go over the ins and outs of creating a boss fight. Bosses they're important. A lot of games try to go away from having the, level boss formula.
Yeah.
I get it. Games try to be a little different. Breath of the Wild was huge like this.
Yeah, it was.
Breath of the Wild didn't really have bosses so much as they had hardened enemies, like your hardened Lionels and stuff like that. And those were your quote-unquote bosses. Games like Skyrim and Fallout don't really have bosses so much. There's a really tough enemy at the end of a dungeon, like a bandit chief or something.
Right.
Or Draugr Deathlord.
I like the Draugr Deathlords.
But a boss is pretty much the same as it's always been. It is a test of your skills. What is it that you have learned so far, and can you apply it properly? So whether it's as loosey-goosey as the stuff we just mentioned, or more like an actual boss, like end-level boss, like in Azura's Wrath or Gods of War, or if it's something that's very specialized in its skills, like one of the bosses in Metal Gear Solid 3. A boss has to be designed well in order to be a memorable experience for the player.
Right.
And hello, Wolf. Welcome to the stream. Good to see you, man.
Yeah, Wolf is right.
You're the boss. I'm a mini boss. Yeah, I'm a common enemy later in the game. Just a bunch of steels running around, some of them with mustaches.
Yes.
Going, I do not know who Steel is. He's pretty sexy sounding. Who is this Steel? So there you go. But here's the thing. Every boss has to have some manner of accessing that teach, enforce, test cycle.
Right.
We're always talking about that. One of the most fundamental things you as a developer ever need to learn is teach, enforce, test. Teach a mechanic, enforce that mechanic,
right,
and then test it. And you can use your bosses as that test. In fact, they even say right here, a boss battle becomes like a graduation test as the player learned to master this type of gameplay. Because if you teach them a technique, a mechanic, something they have to learn, and then the boss can't be beaten easily or at all without somehow utilizing that mechanic, you're testing.
Right.
Has the player learned it? And then as Black Rose says, and you got bosses like Ultimecia, which is a test of patience.
Yeah, that actually is a test of patience.
Yeah, by the way, guys, if your final boss has to have 4 phases, and each phase lasts about 5 to 10 minutes.
Oh my God.
Probably doing it wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Although you can have multi-phase bosses. There's ways to do it right, and we'll get into that in our next piece. So when you're teaching your player a mechanic, focus on the ones that you really want them to learn in that particular sequence.
Yeah.
A good one would be Metal Gear Solid 3. Tries to teach you the CQC, the close quarter combat system.
Right.
And you learn the different ways to implement that, and then you fight against one of the first bosses. You have to learn how to hit things from a long range, and you fight Ocelot.
I remember that one.
The first Ocelot fight in the prologue is more CQC. You're learning how to evade him. He's got the handgun, he doesn't have the revolver at that point. And you have to do a CQC takedown and shoot him with either the tranquilizer gun or whatever. And it's basic mechanics.
Yeah.
Then when you fight him again and he has the revolver, it's more of a long-range combat scenario. You have to learn how to duck and cover, and then come out and you have to shoot him when he comes out or when he's loading.
Yeah.
That load animation when he's loading his revolver is the best time to attack him. So you're taught, and then you're tested on that.
Yeah.
And then as you go through different things like the pain and the fear in the end, the different things you've learned up to then, you're tested on until you finally fight the boss, aptly named as she is, in the final battle, which is a test of everything.
Yep.
You know, you could, with the right weapons, cheese the battle against the boss.
Yeah.
But she's really hard if you don't learn how to do things like cover and the CQC system.
Right.
And learning how to go into a stealth so that the enemy can't see you. She's really difficult if you just try to confront her directly. I think in some ways that's my biggest complaint. This is a side note, guys, with the final battle in Metal Gear Solid 4, because you basically can win it just by punching Ocelot to death for all 4 phases.
Yeah, that's true.
Yes, you can do all the cool stuff that you're supposed to do for each of the 4 phases, but it's more like it's a homage at that point.
Yeah.
Honestly, guys, big, huge fan of Metal Gear Solid 3, and that final fight is my favorite. So they talk a lot about the Batman Arkham games. Those are fantastic examples of how to do boss battles correctly. At a certain point in the Batman stories, you fight against members of the Rogues Gallery, like Killer Croc, the Riddler in a giant mecha during Arkham Knight. But you fight against different members of the Rogues Gallery.
Yeah.
And when you fight against the members of the Rogues Gallery, there's a very unique way to defeat each and every one of them that is indicative of what it is you've learned. I mean, up to and including the damn car, because you actually don't... Oh my
gosh, that car fight.
Right, you don't beat Deathstroke normally.
No.
You defeat him in a car fight, and then the two of you jump out of the cars at each other, and he just takes Deathstroke down.
Yeah.
So Deathstroke is basically a car boss. And that is... The Arkham games are great examples of that. So, you know, this is just going over the different testing concept. Now, there's things beyond what makes a good boss fight outside of the mechanics. I think we've talked that to death. There has to be a build-up. You need to have a good build-up to your boss fight. If you're just walking through a corridor and suddenly a boss comes flying out at you, it's gonna lose its luster.
Yeah.
There's a boss in Final Fantasy VII OG, which is, you know, the characters are just running through like an ice cave, I think.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the boss music plays and they're all looking around and this thing just jumps in front of them and you're fighting them. There's no emotion to that battle. While each one of the Genova fights has an emotion.
Yes.
You know, things like that to consider. Like, I think Genova Life is the big one. That's the one like right after Aerith dies.
Yeah.
You know, there's this huge emotion to that fight. So you want your boss fights to have a build-up. Something that builds up. Doesn't have to be end of the world, your whole life is staked on this one battle. But it's got to be a build-up. And then you have to have a stake.
Yeah, I was going to mention that what's as important as the build-up is having a stake in the boss fight. Yeah. You have to have some kind of stake or connection to this boss.
Right.
What is it that's driving you to face down this creature, this person? And
what can you lose if you lose? You know, there has to be something at stake.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me move down to here.
Yeah,
we have
otherwise
some
it's
too.
just an exercise in button mashing.
Right. And then, you know, give some sense of cinema. And when I say that, I don't mean you have to have this fantastic cinematic, but have an emotion attached to it. Even if the emotion is, this is another monster and I'm putting it out of my misery, you know, that sense of accomplishment of like, you know, I am the hero and I have beaten another monster. The village is safe.
Yes.
You know, an emotion attached to it, like Teal was saying. Okay, let's catch up on chat here. Black Rose has a very good question.
Would a story boss be best any game?
Not sure.
Would a story boss be best
any game? I think I'm not sure what you're asking, Black Rose. I'm gonna guess that you're talking about, would story bosses be the best example of a boss? I don't know. I'm guessing. I'm sorry. Not understanding your question, Black Rose.
Need more words.
Yeah, need more words. Need more words. Words better. So, yeah. Okay, where they go? Any boss that's connected to the main narrative of the game, the main story of the game, needs to have that emotion and stake ramped up to an 11. I'm always referencing Final Fantasy VII Remake because it's such a good game. But when you finally confront Sephiroth at the end of that game, or the Sephiroth vision or whatever,
right,
and it's on multiple fronts, it is a huge emotional fight.
Yes, it is.
For Cloud, this is his tormentor. This is the thing that's been in the back of his head that has been the cause of his massive psychological issues.
Yes.
So for him, facing against Sephiroth, it's him facing his demons. For Tifa, it is her facing against someone who is hurting the man she cares about.
Yeah.
For Barrett, it's somebody who epitomizes danger to the planet. But the strongest in FF7 Remake is Aerith. When she looks at Sephiroth and says, everything about you is wrong.
Yeah.
You just feel this deep connection of savior versus devil.
Yep.
Or light savior versus dark savior. That's even stronger.
That's even stronger.
You know, so just the build up to that story boss was so powerful that when finally Sephiroth comes down to one winged angel starting and he holds out his Masamune, you have every impedance, every impedance. You need to press that attack button and mash that sucker to death. You want to hurt him. You want to beat him.
And on the flip side, Black Rose, you mentioned Ultimecia earlier. Yeah. And that's an example of a boss that is completely flat.
Yeah.
You don't even know who this is. It just comes out of left field.
Right.
And the story explanation that you get, it just seems like it's just kind of tacked on.
Right.
There's no emotional connection to Ultimecia. You don't even know anything about her until near the end anyway. And
right, when you kind of get a guess that it might be the descendant of Squall and Renoa,
you don't know.
Maybe only because she has Griever.
Right.
Maybe. That is a massive maybe.
But there's nothing, there's no connection there.
Yeah. There's nothing.
So that's an example of a fail boss.
Right. And then Burke just mentioned Necron. In fact, both Necron and Zeramus. Both of them are called surprise bosses. One of them has some kind of a little bit of a connection that you can work with, and that's Zeramus. Zeramus is a personification of Zemus's hatred.
Right.
So it is a out of control emotion. And you could, with the right writing and the right foreshadowing, you could work with that. You could have throughout your entire game that emotions can manifest physically.
Yes, you can.
So that when Zemus is finally killed by Gobez and Fasoya and Zeramus rises, then there's a payoff.
Yep.
Necron is literally, hey, Transkuja wasn't enough. Here's a final boss.
Oh my god.
Now, yeah, he's a nod to Chaos. He's a nod to Final Fantasy bosses. He's literally a walking homage to Final Fantasy final bosses, but he makes zero sense.
Yeah.
So there's no emotional connection. And yeah, that's the basis of bosses right there.
Yeah, Burke. Yep. Set up and pay off.
If you can set it up and then have a strong payoff, your boss fight, even if it's just a simple, can I press the right button at the right time? It'll be powerful.
Yeah. It's and yes, it's also the basics of narrative.
Yeah.